All right, let's talk about the United Nations. There's a crisis brewing inside, and it's not about scandals or political drama. It's about something much more fundamental: money. And what we found points to a really quiet but massive transformation that could change the very purpose of the UN.
So let's start with the people on the ground. Imagine this. 30 workers at the Stop TB partnership suddenly get told their contracts are gone. They've got 1 month's notice. And that's it. And this isn't just some one-off thing. All across Geneva, which is a huge hub for the UN, you hear people describing the situation as bleeding out financially.
And you can really feel this sense of crisis. During these intense negotiations for a global plastics treaty, the delegate from Panama just kind of said what everyone was thinking. This is not ambition, this is surrender. It's this deep frustration you hear from diplomats everywhere. Something just feels off. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Right as all this is happening, Swiss authorities step up. They announced this massive relief package. We're talking over 300 million Swiss francs to help out. So you'd think, okay, problem solved, right? Well, not so fast. If there's this huge bailout on the table, what's the actual problem? Turns out that Swiss aid came with one very important string attached. It would not cover losses in contributions by member states. And that one little phrase, that points to a much, much deeper issue than just some simple budget cuts. To really get what's going on, you have to look at how the UN itself has been trying to cope with this new reality. It's started to rely on this giant kind of hidden workforce, creating what is essentially a parallel system of contractors. And right at the heart of this system is an agency you have almost definitely never heard of: UNOPS, the UN Office for Project Services. And if you haven't heard of it, you're not alone. But believe me, its crazy growth is a huge symptom of the UN's quiet transformation. Okay, just look at these numbers, because this is wild. The agency's own report says it has a workforce of over 6,000 people. But the official UN stats, they say UNOPS has just 685 staff. That's a nearly 9 times difference. So where are all the other people? Well, for the most part, they're contractors. People inside the system actually call UNOPS the UN's body shop. It basically acts as a general contractor for other UN agencies, handling everything from hiring people to buying supplies. But its real secret sauce, according to some, is that it lets other UN groups get around their own super strict and expensive hiring rules by bringing in cheaper staff on temp contracts. So why does a body shop like UNOPS even need to exist? Why can't UN agencies just, hire their own people? To figure that out, you have to do the one thing that always explains everything: follow the money. Because this whole contractor system is directly tied to a huge shift in how the UN gets its cash. Okay, so there are basically 2 kinds of money that keep the UN running. First, you've got core funding. The easiest way to think about this is like condo fees. Member countries pay these dues to cover all the basics: keeping the lights on, maintaining the buildings, and paying the core staff who are there to fulfill the UN's main mission. It's predictable and it's flexible. And then there's the other kind: earmarked funding. This is totally different. Sticking with our condo analogy, this is like giving the association extra cash, but saying, hey, you can only use this to fix the swimming pool. Donors hand over this money with very specific strings attached, telling the UN exactly what projects or countries it has to be spent on. And here is the trend that has changed, well, pretty much everything. Over the past 20 years, that flexible, do-what-you-need core funding has basically flatlined, but that restricted, fix-the-pool-only earmarked money, it has absolutely skyrocketed. It's now the main way a lot of UN agencies get their funding. Now, this isn't just some boring accounting shift that you can ignore. It has completely changed the political game at the UN, turning funding into a whole new kind of ideological battlefield. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The UN's own top money person, the controller, has been sounding the alarm. They've pointed out a huge increase in donor money that comes with restrictive or problematic conditions that threaten to mess with the UN's core principles and its ability to act independently. And now, we've got some pretty stunning academic research that shows just how political this has gotten. A recent study dug through decades of funding data and found something pretty incredible. On average, when far-right parties join a donor government, that government cuts its earmarked funding to the UN by almost 30%. This is no accident. It's driven by a deep ideological clash. You have far-right governments that often prioritize nativist agendas, like cracking down on migration. On the other hand, you have UN agencies whose entire mission is based on more liberal ideas, like human development and social justice. Those two worldviews just don't mix. So when these governments realize they can't force the UN to fit their agenda, they try a different tactic.
They just turn off the tap. Instead of trying to influence the system from the inside, they just defund the parts they don't agree with. Earmarked funding, which was supposed to be a tool for helping specific causes, has been turned into a weapon.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. The job cuts in Geneva, the rise of this contractor system, this new political funding game. These aren't separate stories. They are all symptoms of a single, really worrying trend for the future of global cooperation. Academics actually have a name for this: hollow multilateralism. It's a fancy term for a pretty simple idea. You talk the talk of international cooperation, but you're actively working to weaken the very institutions that make it possible. It's like praising the team while you're secretly trying to pull the floorboards out from under them. And you can see the path to a hollowed-out UN crystal clear. It starts when donors move their money to restricted funds to get more control. Then they use that control as a political weapon to punish the agencies they don't like. To deal with this unstable funding, the UN is forced to rely on a flexible contractor workforce. And the end result? The UN's whole purpose as a place for everyone to solve problems together just slowly fades away.
What's really at stake here is the soul of the United Nations. The layoffs in Geneva, that crazy staffing difference at UNOPS, the politicized funding, they all point to a system that's at risk of being hollowed out, changed from a place for collective action into just a service provider that does projects for its most powerful clients.
Which leaves us with a really critical question for the future. As the world faces bigger and more complex challenges, pandemics, climate change, you name it, will the institution designed to help us solve them together become just a collection of contractors for hire, or can it find a way to reclaim its central purpose? The answer, it seems, will depend entirely on who holds the power of the purse.